Retirement came for David Peake in 2002. It closed the book on 40 years in the saddle, on tracks in New Zealand and around the world. And naturally, for the jockey regarded by his peers as the ultimate professional, Peake went out a winner.
History here for David Peake in his last ride, and he has got it big time. Drawing away now Country Fair, and David Peake caps off a tremendous career by a length and a half. Second, Young Prince.
There must have been mixed emotions for the resilient jockey and his family at the time, reviving memories of other successful rides and a great career. As he unsaddled that last time, he might have recalled doing the same on Bay Abbey at Pyroa in 1962, his first winner. Peake was so small he went straight to ground after removing the lead-filled saddle. Trainer and mentor George Cameron had to ask the steward's permission to help retrieve his young apprentice from under the load. Peake's interest in horses and racing was slow to develop. It was eventually inspired by his sister Yvonne joining a pony club. Peake had a natural affinity with horses and was leading apprentice with 29 wins in his last year. He then had a stint in Australia before returning to one of his great moments on the track. Terrific, with Grenville Hughes in the saddle, was the hot favourite for the 1967 Auckland Cup. The young Peake was sent out on Royal Sheen with the trainer's message to stick close to Hughes. Peake followed the plan to the letter, and his idol was bemused to find the new boy edging him after a fierce duel to the line in one of the most memorable Auckland Cups. A particularly proud moment for Peake post-race was appearing on the front and back of Hoofbeats in the same issue. The 1970s is an absolute treasure trove for Peake memories. He won the Jockeys Premiership 5 times, although he had to share it with Noel Harris in 1972-73. It was a decade when Peake joined forces with the legendary Ray Werner, a time when the stable was filled with champions such as Good Lord, Turf Cutter, Prince Majestic and Blue Blood. Peake and Werner had a good relationship, but the jockey was a bit miffed when he wasn't allowed to ride Good Lord to victory in the 1977 Wellington Cup. So he made sure of a big victory with one of 3 Telegraph handicap wins on Blue Blood. It was a different story the following year when Peake was on board Good Lord for the 2nd Wellington Cup. A few months later, the horse, campaigning in Australia as My Good Man, brought Peake one of his biggest thrills in racing, the Sydney Cup.
And high Perno, but it's all My Good Man with 100 metres left to go. He's a mighty stayer. My Good Man is careering away, and he wins the Sydney Cup in a breeze by 5 to 1.
It was a magnificent win, but the jockey still had to explain to the boss why the winner returned with white paint all down one side. Australian Hall of Famer Darby Munro tried to keep Peake and his mount trapped on the rails, but he escaped to claim the biggest win of his career. Another fond memory of the time was a date with royalty. A win on Good Lord at Te Rapa brought a meeting with Queen Elizabeth. Peake and Werner were a formidable combination. Not only did Peake claim his 5th Jockeys Premiership in the 1977-78 season, but he cracked the century for the first time with 107 winners. He was the leading jockey for the 70s with 794 wins, including 5 wins in a day for Werner at Pukekohe. Fitness was the key to Peake's form and longevity in racing. He regularly ran the hills around his home and loved to get out on the cricket pitch with other jockeys when given a chance. Success also brought international invitations and opportunities to ride against some of the best in the world. Peake competed in Japan, South Africa, Singapore, Hong Kong, the United States and Rhodesia. Peake rode Turf Cutter to a 3rd in the Caulfield Cup and a 6th in the Melbourne Cup, and had other success in Queensland.
100 metres to go, and he's got them beaten. Quadrado's too good. Quadrado first, tight 2nd and 3rd.
Another notable milestone along the way was his final Jockeys Premiership in 1982-83, when he broke Bill Skelton's record of 127 in a season. 1,000 winners was a proud milestone, but Peake had his eyes on the very exclusive 2,000 club.
Found a little more. Knock Robin doing best though. Knock Robin went to the post to beat Outlandish Paris Trout 3rd from Juice.
Peake was still the most regular track work rider at Takanini, but the mounts on the bigger name horses were harder to come by in the following years. Race day would still find him saddling up, not in pursuit of more records, but purely for the enjoyment of race riding. When Peake unsaddled that last winter in 2002, it took his career total to 2,085. Sitting on the shelves at home were proud mementos of his biggest wins in Sydney, Auckland and Wellington Cups. And of course, there are the 6 jockey premierships. Retirement also brought acknowledgement of his success at one of his favourite tracks, Ellerslie. 392 winners over 40 years saw him join some illustrious company as an Ellerslie legend in 2005. Peake rode in an era that included many champion jockeys. He was their equal in skill and dedication. They knew that Peake would never give up, that it was always a race to the finish line. And it's that tenacity demonstrated over 40 years that now sees David Peake take his place in the Racing Hall of Fame.